session. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much. Looks like it's a 6 o'clock start, right on time. For attendance, we do have everyone with us on Teams tonight, just waiting on Trustee Sartori to pop in here. I'm sure she will be here any minute. If not, she will join us again at 7 o'clock when we come back into public session. So I'm just looking for approval. I've got a mover already for the agenda. Thank you, Trustee Leclerc. Seconded by Trustee Cook. Thank you very much. Any discussion on the public agenda this evening? Any discussion on that, trustees? Welcome, Trustee Sartori. We're just approving the agenda. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, anyone opposed to the agenda as presented tonight? None opposed, and that passes. Looking for a mover to convene into private session. Moved by Trustee Leclerc. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Sartori. Anyone opposed? Trustee Burgess, lovely to see you in on Teams tonight. That's great. I'm glad you were able to make it in. No one opposed? I'm assuming that's a latent hand that she's not opposed to going into private session. And that passes. We'll see you over in private session. We'll be back here in public at 7 p.m. Thanks, everybody. To order again here at 7:01. We did call our meeting to order at 6, but here we are back in public session. Just for attendance purposes, once again, for those of us joining now, we do have everyone with us here on Teams tonight. And I will begin with our land acknowledgement, and then we do have a special order of the day. So I will begin now with that. We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Blenny Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, the Potawatomi, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Director Kelly for a special order of the day. Are you frozen, Director Kelly? Oh, I think you're back here.
I think Director Kelly, I was lost there in the internet for a bit. Sorry. The tribute, is it okay to go ahead and read, Trustee Higginson? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We are saddened to hear of the passing of Jennifer Soucy. Jennifer Soucy was a dedicated early childhood educator who was loved by her students. She started in the childcare field over 20 years ago. Jennifer worked as an early childhood educator at LaSalle Public School and Colchester North Public School, ending her career at Jack Minor Public School. Jennifer was passionate about her job. She loved and cared about every student and truly wanted to make a difference wherever she could. Jennifer's passing has left us with heavy hearts. She will definitely be missed by her many colleagues, her former students, and the Jack Minor community. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kelly. Okay, we'll move through our agenda. We are at E on our public agenda. Any declarations of conflict of interest? We're in here. Seeing and hearing none, we have no actions of our board meeting private session this evening. I have a mover for the minutes of January 18th, been moved by Trustee Cook, seconded by Trustee Leclerc. Thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? Any discussion on those minutes, trustees? Anyone opposed to the approval of those minutes from January 18th? Seeing and hearing none, that passes. Thank you very much. Any business arising from those minutes? Any business arising from those minutes, trustees? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move down to our presentation. We've got our student trustees. Who's starting with us this evening first?
That would be me.
Trustee McCowie, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Director Kelly, Senior Administration, and trustees. This past month has been filled with exciting initiatives and events. First and foremost, students across the GECDSB are glad to be returning to a regular semester model. After almost 2 years of scheduling madness, this marks the first return to normalcy within our schools. It's no secret education has suffered as a result of the pandemic. However, the return to a semester model brings with it relief for students. In other news, the 2022 Student Leadership Conference was successfully held on February 4th. Students were eager to learn all about mental health and well-being, the student voice, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. This year's theme was none other than perseverance. We would also like to thank our impeccable keynote speaker, Mr. Mark Black. Student Senate held their monthly meeting just last week, where this year's Senate swag was officially unveiled. Students were presented with the board's improvement and equity plan. We were pleased to learn an emergent priority was learning recovery and renewal. Paige and I are also excited to announce the creation of this year's Student Senate subcommittees, Student Wellbeing and the Student Achievement and Development Committee. The Student Wellbeing Committee's purpose is to bring awareness to well-being resources provided by our board. The Student Development and Achievement Subcommittee will work to identify skill-related gaps in learning across the GECDSB as they relate to life after high school. And on the topic of Senate, love is certainly in the air this week as senators plan exciting Valentine's Day Spirit Weeks for schools. From candygrams to anything but a backpack day, secondary school students definitely have quite the exciting week ahead of them. Likewise, kindness is an emerging theme as we approach Random Acts of Kindness Day. Student Senate's Rock Day initiative will be a specialized letter of appreciation to GECDSB staff. Student senators were also excited to share how they've been promoting Black History Month. Student Senate's outstanding leadership and advocacy doesn't stop there. For the first time, the GECDSB Student Senate will be collaborating with the coterminous WECDSB Student Senate on a menstrual hygiene initiative. Alongside student trustees Jada Mallet and Gina Tuma, we present Tampon Tuesday. We encourage all members of the Windsor-Essex community to make a monetary donation or donate period products like tampons and pads for menstrual equity and hygiene. Schools are already excited to donate and compete for the first place title for not only Windsor-Essex-wide bragging rights, but a very special prize to come. Paige and I look forward to attending the Ontario Student Trustee Association's second annual meeting, the 2022 Board Council Conferences. We're excited to see what OPSBA has planned for us this year. Lastly, the election for the GECDSB 2022-2023 Student Trustees is quickly approaching. We look forward to seeing the election unfold for the first time ever and truly appreciate the consensus in allowing this to be a completely student-led initiative. Thank you to Director Kelly, Senior Administration, and Trustees for your continued support and leadership. Most notably, Michelle Marquez and Superintendent Forbach, who constantly guide and mentor both Paige and I as we navigate our roles. We would also like to thank the GECDSB student body for their continued support and patience as we work together to foster an inclusive community within the GECDSB. And now on to our Student of the Month.
Thank you, Malik, and I am honored this evening to present the Student of the Month for the month of February. For the month of February, Student Senate is pleased to award Riley Woodall with the GECDSB Student of the Month for reliability. Riley is a grade 11 student at Tecumseh Vista Academy Secondary, who alongside a heavy course load, devotes her time and skills assisting in programs and initiatives such as Drama Club, GSA, Jack.org, and TVA Student Parliament. Most notably, Riley consistently demonstrates how reliable she is by not only doing what she is asked, but by going above and beyond and taking the initiative and bringing new ideas that better the community. Whether she is serving a friend, her classmate, or her community, Riley is constantly putting the needs of others above her own. Her humility sets an example to everyone of what reliability truly means. Everything Riley does is out of motivation to help others. Because of this, we nominate Riley to recognize her relentless commitment and dedication to the community, and most importantly, her reliability. Thank you.
Thank you both very much, and congratulations to Riley. I have some secondhand knowledge of Riley, as my daughter is also in grade 11 at TVA, and she's quite a pillar there. So congratulations to her. Thank you very much for that report. Do I have any questions of clarification from trustees on the student trustee report? Trustee Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could ask the student trustees through you, thanks for the, and congratulations, you're back to the regular semester model. I want to appreciate that the focus on perseverance, but I want to ask, because the subcommittee has been struck, obviously this is a concern for all of us about the mental wellness and the mental health. How are students faring? How are students well? What is the general consensus about how students are doing as far as their mental wellness and mental preparedness for getting us through this year and the next, having had 2 extraordinary years behind them?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the question, Trustee Burgess, and through you, Madam Chair. Obviously, as student trustees, we cannot speak for all of the students across our board. Everyone has had very unique experiences over the past 2 years. But I'd say things, although things have been difficult and different, I think students have persevered very well throughout these difficulties and are able to communicate their needs to support their well-being to their teachers and the staff at their schools. Within the, you mentioned the student well-being subcommittee on Student Senate. We haven't had our first meeting yet. That's happening later this week. But some of our goals are to just promote healthy habits to students through using social media channels and things like that. And just overall sending the message that, you don't have to be okay all the time, and it's okay to have those bad days, and that there are people in your schools and in your community who are able to help you with that. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
It really does. My question supplementally would be, I'm hoping that subcommittee, when you advise the staff, if there is any advice to the board that needs further support, it's not just through administration, it can be at, through your reporting. I look forward to that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Trustee Sipkar.
Yeah, just a quick question through you, Madam Chair. When was the date of, or the time periods for the student trustee elections again? I missed that, I think.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. The elections are scheduled to happen Friday, February 25th, and they will begin at 4:30.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I do have a question, and I'm grateful to Trustee Burgess for asking it. And so, Student Trustee Hawkins did sort of roundabout answer it, and you may not have an answer for this, or maybe something that the subcommittee is meeting about. But that well-being subcommittee, you mentioned that one of the goals of it was to gather the resources and make students aware of the resources that the board has for mental well-being and well-being. Is there a plan, or are you developing a plan in that subcommittee to distribute those, and what sorts of pathways are you looking for that are really accessed by students? What kind of things are you hearing about getting that message out and having those resources in a place where students know where they are and can access them?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's our main communication with students right now is through social media. So that'll be just a big a way that we can kind of bring awareness to where they're located, like on the board website, in schools, how you can talk to your guidance department and things like that. But I'd say that definitely social media is our biggest way of communication with students and with young people. And that's definitely what we rely on most, and will continue to do going forward.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. I'll make a plug for that Instagram channel. I follow it. So good job, guys, on that. Keep that work up. Thank you very much for that report. And congratulations again to Ms. Woodall on being student trustee or student of the month. Okay, moving through our agenda, we have no delegations and no one on the speakers list. So we are at L1. We have a notice of motion from Trustee Cook, a recommendation that the GECDSB review all school names, mascots, and team names and report back to trustees, written and verbal, at the first board meeting in September 2022. Trustee Cook, would you like to move it?
I would, thank you.
Do I have a seconder for that? Trustee Hatfield, is that you seconding it?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. So that's been moved and seconded. Trustee Cook, would you like to speak to it?
I would. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this motion, I feel it is important. We just had an incident at Riverside, and there were some changes that needed to be made. And I feel that reading the report that was put out by the equity officer, there's some things in there. And one thing that really stands out for me is acknowledging and I'm just going to read it from there, for acknowledging and sincerely apologizing for the damaging messages, harms caused by all of these names and representations. My point being is that I think it's important that we review other schools' names, mascots, etc. Because if there is any issues and it's doing the same damage to community, student, staff, then it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. And yes, I know last meeting administration said that they are going to examine or review, but there was no timeline. And I just think that this is an important issue and that we need to have a timeline around it. And that's my reasoning for this motion. I think it's a very important issue, and I know that there are some issues out in the community with names, mascots, whatever it might be, and I just think that we as a board need to address those as soon as possible and make the necessary changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cook. Do we have any other questions, or Trustee Sipkar, is that a latent hand, or did you have your hand? Perfect. Trustee Burgess, go ahead.
Not a question, but the motion is on the floor, so this is discussion, I suppose. But I'm assuming, through you, Madam Chair, if I could ask, I'm assuming that by names, mascots, and team names, that it also means any iconography at all, like any images at all that are used within a school. And I'm assuming, since it doesn't explicitly say with an equity lens or whatever, by the mover's description, it's a review with that in mind. And so my question would be, through you, Madam Chair, if I could, that's my assumption. My question would be, when administration said they were going to be doing this, is it already kind of underway, or how will it be done? Just operationally? Would there be a specific committee struck? What's the idea going forward? I know that we were expecting it, I suppose, at policy at some time, but that would be my question.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I could. I know that Superintendent Howard and I spoke about this today, and we do have a graduate student who is beginning to do some of this work, and we're looking at a process in terms of collaborating with each school to get the history of the information from the school, but also to do a thorough job of that and look at resources that can tell us more. So that was the initial plan, and I don't know, Superintendent Howard, I know you had a discussion today, so if you want to add more to that, but we had some ideas of what kind of things we were looking for, so I don't want to speak for you, but I believe that that discussion has occurred.
Yes, it has, Director Kelly. We had a planning meeting today. Part of the steps are looking at other boards that may have gone through the process to seek to understand what they went through in terms of their lens to help us to making sure that we're thorough with the work, looking at school names, mascots, perhaps school songs and chants, and also what was provided to us as guidance from the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee in our discussions around the Riverside scenario and mascot and so on. They guided us with an idea to establish in the school the purpose of the school name and mascot so that that is visible to everyone in perpetuity and moving forward, right? Because we're all going to be, out of the school system at one point, and there'll be wonderful people coming up behind us many years from now, maybe not understanding why we named X school a name or a mascot. So to help people in understanding the why. So that's part of the process too. But that has started officially today, our first meeting on that.
Supplemental, Madam Chair?
Indeed, go ahead.
Just to clarify again, I cut out there for a bit. I don't think I missed much, but I rejoined. So my thought, again, my assumption with report back would be, this is the status quo. I'm also assuming that there may be recommendations coming from that. So it's not just a report on status quo. There would be some recommendations coming forward, possibly for keeping status quo or for change or for things like that to establish, some back history at every school. And also, I raised it last time this was spoken about. I have a real concern about reunions. So that in perpetuity piece, that there'd be some sort of maybe recommendation arising from the report about how we handle legacy names and iconography at events moving forward, honoring alumni and their memories, and yet, not doubling down on things that are offensive. Thank you.
If I could.
Go ahead, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Burgess. I do think I heard most of what you said, but yes, the intention would be to have recommendations. Obviously, the report would generate, what concerns there were, and of course, we would be providing recommendations on that. And thank you for your comment about the reunions. I do think that is something we do need to consider as well, and what that looks like. Although I think the idea from the Indigenous community was largely that, how do you show, what something stands for and why things were changed. And I think it's an important part of this story.
Thank you very much. I have hands up from Trustee Sipcar and then Trustee Hatfield. Go ahead, Trustee Sipcar.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Trustee Burgess kind of touched on my main question, which was around the recommendations piece with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion concerns. I think neither of those are really captured in the motion. And those were my two questions, I guess. I think hearing from administration, it sounds like this work is already being undertaken with that lens. And it also sounds like it'll come back with recommendations. And maybe this doesn't need to happen, but maybe I was going to suggest a friendly amendment to just say at the end with recommendations concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think if we were to just review them for the sake of reviewing them, it doesn't really make sense. And if I'm understanding correctly, that's the intent of the motion. So it might as well be crystallized if Trustee Cook is amenable to that.
So is that an amendment we're putting on the floor to add? And sorry, can you
so right at the end, just at the first board meeting, report back to trustees, written and verbal, to include recommendations regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion concerns or something like that. I didn't really word it, but I'm open to however administration or Trustee Cook sees fit.
Okay, so we have a proposed amendment on the floor to add in a report. So the recommendation would read, work with me here, mascots and team names and a report to include recommendations. Oh, I wrote
concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion concerns. Yeah, sorry, I said concerns twice.
Do we kind of have that nailed down? Are we okay with that amendment? Sorry, we're kind of wordsmithing it as we go along. Trustee Sipar, are you okay with that kind of wordsmithing of that amendment? Okay, do we have a seconder for that amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, that's been seconded. Any discussion on that amendment? Trustee Burgess, go ahead on the amendment. Yes.
I think this is the wordsmithing thing. I think the intent is great, but I don't think you put it on after the word report. I think it's awkward. To read it back so that it makes sense to me.
I can attempt that. Yes. So
written and verbal with the lens of, or something like that. It's awkward the way
that the GECDSB review all school names, mascots, and team names, and a report to include recommendations concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion come back to trustees, written and verbal, at the first board meeting of September 2022. That's the current one on the floor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions on the amendment? Is this on the amendment, Trustee Cheen?
Yes, the amendment. Regarding the amendment, I have question is regarding with regards to current names or the naming system in the future. I mean, for the current names, I cannot figure out how we can input all this in the current name. Do we want to change those names? I know it's very costly, and we have a lot of debate each time to set up a name. And if the current name has no issue with discrimination, how we can input the those kind of concerns on the current system.
Thank you. So I believe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe the question is if whether that amendment would apply a diversity lens to all of these names and whether that's an appropriate lens to look through.
Yeah, I just don't cannot figure out how to do that to those current names.
I think that is the work of administration I don't want to answer for anybody, but that is the work of administration. It is part of our strategic priorities, and it is the work that does kind of overlay a lot of what we have in our board operating plan already. So I think that is the lens that we use to make a lot of the decisions that we see here and the reports that we get back. We see them delineated on our reports now on which pillars of our strategic plan are being considered as a part of that report. And so I think that may be some of that work. I don't want to answer on behalf of administration, but if I'm off on that, you can correct me.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions on the amendment before we vote on it? And Trustee Sukar has put that in the chat.
I have my hand up.
Is that on the amendment, Trustee Leclerc?
Both.
Or on the original? Yeah, I had you in the list here for on the original motion, but
okay. I can wait till the original.
Wonderful, thank you. So anything on the amendment? I'm going to call the question on the amendment. So anyone opposed to the amendment? Hearing and seeing none, we have an amended motion on the floor, and I'm back to the queue of taking questions. I have Trustee Hatfield and Trustee Leclerc. So go ahead, Trustee Hatfield.
Thank you. Yes, I think although we just heard from administration that they've already given thought to this initiative and have taken some steps in that direction, I still think it's important that the trustees go on record as supporting this initiative, and that we feel that it's necessary to be undertaken at this time. So I would hope that trustees would support the motion for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hatfield. Go ahead, Trustee Leclerc.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't want to jump in at the wrong place, but I wasn't sure if you could see my hand or not. I could see it. Anyways, I just want to speak in support of this motion. Obviously, I support anything that moves in the direction of equity and inclusion and providing better supports for our students. I also see this as a proactive measure. It's unfortunate that we've been in a reactive mode in the past for some of these issues. You look at Riverside, it's unfortunate that we had to have students bring it to the attention and run it up the chain to us. It would have been better if we had recognized the issues ourselves. I do hope that when we do walk through this process, that somehow when something is identified that we need to address, that it doesn't just kind of land like Led Zeppelin you know, as a surprise to the community, that somehow we manage our messaging better to let them know that, you know, this may be an issue and we're looking at it in advance. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Leclerc. Any other questions or comments from trustees on the amended motion? Is that a latent hand, Trustee Leclerc?
Yep, trying to put it down now.
I see it, I really do. So I've had a recorded vote requested, so we will be, Trustee Halberstadt, did you have a question?
Yeah, my question is how this is going to be carried out, and what criteria might it be, like for instance, if it's anything that speaks of violence or war, that we would seek a change. I know there are some schools out there, you know, like that with those kind of names, and I'm just wondering, is that what the committee is going to do? Is first establish what the criteria is for changing the name. I know it was for certainly what we know what the criteria was for the other two where the names have been changed, but just wondering if there's going to be some guidelines with regard to, as I said, something like violence or war, any kind of reference that way. Is that the idea?
For you, Madam Chair, it's Director Kelly. Thank you, Trustee Halberstadt. A very good point. We do need to establish some criteria, particularly on images of hate, harm, violence, of course, would be considerations, but thank you for that. Indeed, that will be happening.
Thank you very much. I did have a couple questions. Some of them have been touched on a little bit, and I do appreciate that administration did clarify that this will come back with some recommendations. I note that school names, so the names on the kind of outside of buildings, we've had a few of those votes here. I'm quite privileged to be able to do that on behalf of our communities in consultation with communities and their committees. That's the purview of trustees. However, mascots, team names, those sorts of things are held at the school level. So I'm wondering how we delineate how we imagine those recommendations will be delineated in the report, and how the school communities will be involved in maybe some of the recommendations that come forward from here. And the reason I ask about how the school communities will be involved is I'm grateful to have the timeline, but I want to allow schools to have the possibility of having some internal conversations in there of what their school means to them, and not have it come out in a board report that there's a reason for their school name to be changed. I know that it was painful for the Riverside community to learn it in this way, and I want there to be some recognition of involvement for the school community. So I'm wondering how those two things will be kind of, or how we imagine maybe those will be delineated in the report.
Through you, Madam Chair, and Superintendent Howard, you may want to chime in here on this, because I know you had a conversation today. But I do think that there does need to be a discussion with parent councils, for example, and to make sure that they understand, which actually did happen in the Riverside situation. But again, I think that's an important conversation to be able to understand the why and the history of things, and make sure that people aren't, as you know, blindsided by the information. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Dr. Howard.
Yes, I would concur, Madam Director, that would be a critical component, reaching out to administration, to staff at the school who have corporate memory, to alumni who have corporate memory about the why, whether it be the mascot or the school name. So it would be a collaborative process to engage in. So it would be visible to individuals within the school and the community.
Thank you for that. So I've had conversations with community members throughout this since learning about Riverside, and the need for or the desire for education around this, and that is what everybody kind of wants out of this. Whether you land on one side or the other of support for the Riverside situation, that what they're calling out for is some education on it. And I think having those school community conversations is so important for that work, not only as Superintendent Howitt noted, for alumni and for people whose, I know for my own self, I'm a Harrow Hawk forever. So it's very important to me, but also for those that are currently part of the school and those we welcoming in. We're looking at kindergarten registration, and how do we welcome students in as Vista Vortex or as Raptors, and how do you welcome them into those conversations? I think it's very important that we do that. And so I'm grateful that we're undertaking this work. Thank you to Trustee Cook for putting this forward. I am supportive of it. I'm grateful to administration for starting on this work and having that lens. And thank you to Trustee Sukar for that amendment, having the lens of equity and really looking at our communities in this very equitable way, and trying to lead the way in how we uphold the Ontario Human Rights Code and still keep hold of our values as school communities as well. So if I see and hear no other questions, a recorded vote has been, Trustee Burgess, do you have a last question?
Oh, it's actually, I think, like a point 4 clarification. I just want to make sure in the motion it says equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It doesn't mention hate, harm, violence. I'm just going to assume that we are all by consensus agreeing to that as an understood value, included in that motion.
Thank you for that, Trustee Burgess. Okay, so a recorded vote has been requested. I'm going to go through and call out if you could unmute your mic and give your vote at that time. Trustee Olmsted.
Absolutely support.
Trustee Halberstadt.
Support.
Trustee Cook.
Support.
Trustee Hatfield.
Support.
Trustee Sartori.
Support.
Trustee Burgess.
Support.
Trustee Cheen.
Support.
Trustee Leclerc.
Support.
Student Trustee McCowie.
Support.
Student Trustee Hawkins.
Support.
And I'm in support as well. Trustee Sipcar, did I call on you? No, I did not.
No, but support.
Did I miss anyone else going through the list? I did not, and that passes. Thank you very much, trustees. Thanks, Trustee Sipcar. I see your message in the chat here. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're moving on to L2. We have our Capital Priorities Program, and the recommendation is that the board approve the submission of the Capital Priorities Project to the Ministry of Education for the 2022-23 year as presented. Superintendent Armstrong, is this you presenting this?
Thank you, through Madam Chair. I'd certainly be happy to start on behalf of myself and Superintendent Allender and Director Kelly. So on February the 4th, the ministry released its launch of the 2022-23 Capital Priorities Program. As I indicated, it was just released a week and a half ago. And school boards are being invited to identify their 5 most urgent pupil accommodation needs for ministry funding consideration. Of the 5 submissions, the ministry is requiring that 2 submissions be brand new and that boards can bring forward 3 submissions from the prior year's Capital Priorities Program for reconsideration by the ministry. All of the people, the program supports accommodation pressures, replacing schools that are in poor condition, supporting past consolidation measures, as well as creating childcare spaces in schools. So as part of that, the director, the superintendent of school development and design, myself, the manager of facility services, and Watson and Associates met together to discuss the renewal needs of the board and to try and identify, based on the prior year's capital submissions that were not successful, which 3 seemed to make the most sense to move forward, and as well to identify 2 additional priorities for the board for consideration by the ministry. We've provided a report for you that identifies the 5 priorities. Briefly, the first priority that the board has identified is a new school for Forest Glade Public School to be built on the existing school site. That is an existing capital priority that we submitted last year. It was ranked #1 last year, and we are recommending ranking that as the first priority for this year. The second priority that we would like to submit as #2 would be a replacement school for Marlborough Public School. That is also an existing priority that we submitted last year. It was ranked #6 last year. We are recommending to bring it forward to #2. We would bring that forward. We would develop the school on the existing school site, recognizing the heritage component of that school. We acknowledge that is there and is a consideration. The third project that we would recommend moving forward is an addition to Northwood Public School. That is one of the 2 new ones that we are recommending, and the report does identify the significant accommodation pressures and the space issues at that school. The 4th priority we're recommending is an addition for Talbot Trail Public School. That is an existing project that we submitted last year as ranked as #4. We are suggesting that that is our 4th priority, again for the same reasons for Northwood. And the last priority that we would like to recommend is an addition for Westgate Public School, for the same reasons as I mentioned with Talbot Trail and with Northwood. And it would be a new submission. We have not submitted that previously. In the prior year, we did submit for a request for a new school in Southwest Windsor. That request was not successful with the ministry. One of the biggest challenges associated with that request last year was the ability to find an appropriate sized parcel of land to build and construct a school in that region. Particularly, there's a lot of areas in that region that are protected. So that's why we are recommending additions at the 3 schools, which is needed. There's a lot of portables at those schools, and we believe that that would be the best solution going forward. We've also included in the report the 5-year capital priority rolling report that trustees had requested, so that you can see over the past 5 years what the board did put forward and what was successful. And with that, myself and Superintendent Allwender would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to get a motion on the floor before we start questions and discussion on it. I saw Trustee Hatfield's hand up. Were you moving it, Trustee Hatfield?
I move it. Yes. Thank you.
And seconded by Trustee Leclaire. Thank you very much. So now I'm looking for hands up for questions. Trustee Hatfield, no, you put your hand down. Wonderful, thank you. So I have Trustee Burgess and then Trustee Halberstadt. Go ahead, Trustee Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only have the option of putting my hand up for questions. I have no chat function, so just to let you know, I have that. My question is about priority number 3, the addition at Northwood Public School. I certainly support the motion on the floor, in that order in the prioritization. But my question about Northwood is, since my time on the board, this will have been the 4th edition, and plenty of portables, and the growth is projected. And I always think.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt Trustee Burgess, but can we make sure our mics are muted, everyone? I can't hear Trustee Burgess's question.
So my question is, we're looking for an addition in the 4th edition in my time on the board. And some of these additions have been fairly plain and non-air conditioned. And I look at the other proposals, and I know that a new school, if we get Marlborough, if we get Forest Glade, if we get the others, they will be state of the art, and they will be nice, and they will be air conditioned, all of that. But I'm not so sure about priority number 3 that it'll be up to the same standard. So we might have a school that will physically accommodate everybody in a building and not portables, have more than 1,000 students. But if they're in small, plain classrooms that aren't air conditioned, I don't think that's really an equitable piece. So could somebody tell me what the ventilation upgrades are there? If it's a possibility that when we do this addition and we put this prioritization forward to the ministry, that we actually upgrade the whole building? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, it takes me a second there. Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly, we could consider air conditioning in the addition for Northwood. All of our schools, with the exception of those that are scheduled to close because they're being replaced, have all been upgraded with mechanical ventilation. And I do appreciate the concerns. There have been a lot of additions at Northwood. We certainly did examine the actual site and the layout of the school before even recommending an addition to this school, to make sure that there was sufficient space and a footprint to do so, which we do believe that there is. And certainly we would take into consideration all of those items, including air conditioning that you have mentioned. There are 10 portables at that school. So we certainly feel that an addition is warranted.
Supplemental, Madam Chair, if I could, though?
Yes, go ahead.
The last edition, 2013, I think 2007, I can't remember the 2003 one. are additions, but they weren't mechanically air conditioned. Are you saying there's mechanical ventilation for heating but not AC there now? Since you said that all things are mechanically ventilated. Can you give me an update on what's there now? Status quo?
Thank you for the question. Through you, we have mechanical ventilation in the school. That's not necessarily the same thing as air conditioning. So certainly I'm happy to follow up on that question with facility services to clarify for you.
Thank you for that. Trustee Halberstadt, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I was just have a couple of questions on Marlborough, being the second priority. I know we did some building there the last couple of years with regard to accommodating a French immersion. And I'm wondering if we build a new school there, would there be an overlap of the money we've already spent on that school, and or could it be incorporated into the new school if that's the way we go?
Thank you for the question through you, Madam Chair. That school build will be unique if we're successful with it, because the property is listed with the City of Windsor through their heritage listing. The school's very old, beautiful, but it's old, which is reflected in the renewal needs of the school, which are over $9 million, and there is components of that school that are significantly old. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Certainly we would look at using elements of the school, but there is so much renewal needs that are required. I would think that a lot of that work would need to be redone to get the school up to an appropriate standard. Where we can repurpose and reuse, we certainly will, but there is significant work as outlined in the report that is required.
Superintendent Armstrong, can you remember how much funding we put into that addition at Marlborough when they started moving the French immersion kids over there?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, that actually predates me being with the board, so I'll follow up on that for you, and I'll get an answer for you on that.
Okay, just a supplementary. I noticed we are using a lot of portables. There's a reference in there about portables, 300 portables. Are portables accommodating 300 children or students? Is that the case? Like there's 100 students in one portable? Is that generally the rule or the case?
I'm going to defer that question, if I would, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Allwender.
Yes, thank you for the question through you, Madam Chair. It's not that way, Trustee Halberstadt. The portables count the same as a classroom does. So it's a 23-to-1 ratio.
How many students are in the portables, Superintendent Allwender?
Yeah, it's a 23-to-1 ratio. So that's how the ministry looks at it. So it could be 18 in a portable, or it could be 25, 26 in a portable.
Thank you. Trustee Sipcar.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to administration. Thank you. I know that we've had this submission come to us for the last several years, and it's significantly more detailed than it has been in past years. So I appreciate that. My question was actually kind of about that detail and about the structure of the report. I noticed that priority 1 and priority 2 are similar in nature in terms of having significant renewal needs, being somewhat replacements of existing schools on site. Really similar in terms of the amount of students, but also, or I shouldn't say very similar, but similar. And then also, the major difference with Marlborough being the heritage considerations that is not existing with Forest Glade. My question is, and I also noticed though in the actual report, under priority 1, it says the project submission allows for the following benefits, but that structure doesn't carry over into priority number 2. So what would be the benefits of this? I think they're self-evident with Marlborough, but I think there are things there that could be further expanded on. My question has to do with how did you end up ranking these two, and what were some of the factors other than one is a little bit more money, one, like, I'm just trying to understand, because it seems as though there's not real, like, we don't have like the matrix or the criteria or components or things like that. And so I'm wondering if there's just a sense from administration that one will be more likely to be supported, if the ranking matters at all. It's not clear to me why some are supported over the others.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to start that answering that question, and perhaps Superintendent Allender and Director Kelly would be happy to chime in. I guess one of the first things I want to acknowledge is that the capital priority request from the ministry came out on February the 4th, which was just a week ago from Friday. And so certainly we had to review the information and then meet internally to make an assessment on these priorities. And then we had to get a board report prepared prior to be submitted to you in advance of the meeting. So our timelines in and of that self were really compressed. So I apologize for inconsistencies in the report. We tried our best, and we are still actually working on business cases and writing them up for the 2 new projects. In terms of the question related to the benefits, with respect to Marlborough, most definitely the renewal needs of that school are significant, and that would be one of the more significant aspects that we would be looking at. We also see that there's portables on site, and with the introduction of French immersion and that being added to each subsequent grade, we do believe that potentially enrollment at that school is going to increase. And it would be nice to be able to do so in a way that doesn't involve adding portables all the time. There's also the benefit that the school site is so large that we could accommodate something on the existing site without having to look for land. So that's certainly some of the benefits associated with that. With Forest Glade, that is 2 schools, 2 separate buildings with 1 school principal, separated by a park. So in and of itself, it's just awkward by that nature. It's not a blend, if you will, of the full school community. Also inside those buildings, it's an open concept. So there are partitions that separate learning spaces, but not full walls and not full classrooms. And those partitions tend to encroach on the learning space as teachers add elements to create more privacy and to address sound and things of that nature. So we don't necessarily feel that that's the best learning environment for the students. And again, the other benefit of that is, again, we believe that we could construct 1 school on the existing site where the Forest Glade Public School is. And we've worked with the City of Windsor to already build a brand new bus bay that serves both schools, but would equally serve 1 new school on that site. You know, how you rank one versus the other, I think we looked at primarily the learning environment at Forest Glade. The open concept certainly was something that we're very keen to try and eliminate. There is renewal needs, obviously, also with that school as well. With both of those schools, and the fact that it's 1 principal, 2 buildings, it's very awkward that way. So I think that sort of was the tipping point between the 2 of them. But they're from us, they're all worthy projects for consideration.
Director Kelly, did you have something to add?
No, I just wanted to thank you for that comprehensive overview, Superintendent Armstrong. I did want to add that sometimes we might rank them, but the last time we got something that was third or fourth on our list. So that ranking really, while we may prioritize that in some ways, the ministry will be looking at each of these projects for their merit. So I just want to let you know that just because we put it number one doesn't mean that the ministry will agree with that case, and all of these business cases are taken into consideration. So I appreciate the work done by facilities to ensure the cases are thorough.
And thank you. Just as a quick comment, and yeah, I fully appreciate the context of the report coming out quickly, and I didn't mean to nitpick on certain things. My concern was that we're not applying the same criteria to each of the priorities, because I believe there are needs across the system. That's very clear, and how to rank, impact on the learning environment versus another. For example, that is a really important, part of the criteria of why it would be ranked higher, but it doesn't necessarily come through. And so I know every year we're tweaking these reports, and so I just think it's my own, noting that really giving trustees a full picture of our renewal needs, but also in the context of the learning environments in order to rank them, I think is important, knowing that the ministry might not even care about the ranking anyway. So but I didn't want you to feel that I was nitpicking. It was more to understand the underlying criteria. So thank you.
Thanks for that. Do we have any other questions from trustees? I did have one, and I'm grateful. I'm going to echo Trustee Sipkar's point there about the fulsomeness of this report. I really appreciate seeing not only the kind of rationale for each selection in there, but also in context with the last kind of 5 submissions that we've had. It's really good to kind of take it all into one view. And you may not be able to answer this question, and I note that at the beginning of the report, you kind of give the idea from the ministry what they're looking for us to submit as criteria for themselves. Our board just declared a climate emergency, and so I'm wondering for our board, if moving forward, if it's not a criteria that is something that the ministry is telling us they care about in our rankings, what do we do, or what are we looking forward in the future to, or what are we considering in the future in the next kind of iteration of these reports that is taking into consideration that climate lens? I noted Superintendent Armstrong said that some of the Sandwich South lands are protected, and that those things go into our decision making. Is there a lens that we take internally, a climate lens that we're going to be taking internally that goes into our decision making in this matrix and in these rationale decisions that we have with accommodation pressures and FCI pressures and those sorts of things? Where does it kind of land in there, and how do we look forward, or when we're looking forward, how declaring a climate emergency maybe change some of these decisions, or does it?
Oh, goodness. Through you, Madam Chair, that's a big question. You're right. I probably can't answer all of that right now. Certainly anything that we are looking at constructing, we always will look at it from an energy efficiency lens. We don't want to be adding to our carbon footprint. So certainly anything that we're doing, we're going to try and be as sustainable, environmentally friendly as we can, acknowledging, though, that some of those initiatives are expensive too. And we have to be mindful of the funding that we're going to get, because this is all on ministry benchmarks, which I know that we've acknowledged in the past probably aren't as high as we would like to see them. So that does make it a little bit difficult. But we certainly do try to ensure that what we are building is energy efficient, and I believe that we are successful with that as we have been constructing over the past for the past years.
I appreciate that, and I noted in the report that it doesn't appear in any of the ministry's directive to us, and so we're operating under what they're asking us to send, and we have pressures of our own that are being met by this funding. Hopefully, when or if we are successful on these, I guess I'm just hoping to send the message to the ministry, who I'm sure watches our board meetings, that that's something that we care about here, and that the province cares about and the world cares about, and so maybe I'm hopeful that there can be some movement on considering those as part of our future submissions. But thank you for that that answer. I appreciate that. Trustee Halberstadt, did you have a last question before I call the vote on this?
Yes, I'm just wondering, the ministry there a number of years ago put a pause on or a freeze on tearing down schools. And I'm wondering if this, anything in this, on any of these projects would perhaps violate that freeze or whatever you want to call it, or a pause, or would it be something that they have no problem with?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. These projects are not about closing schools. The two that we're bringing forward in this priority list is just to replace existing schools, as well as putting additions on 3 existing schools as well. So there's nothing in here about closing schools, which is where there is the moratorium on.
Do we have any idea when this embargo might come off? Administration heard about that, or through the grapevine?
Nope. Nope. No news on that.
Maybe just after the election.
You never know, Trustee.
Never do know. You never do know. All right, I'm going to call the question on this one. Trustees, thanks for all those questions, and thank you to Superintendent Armstrong, your team, Superintendent Auwender, and your team for that great report and putting all that together and answering those questions for us. Thank you very much. So, anyone opposed? We have a moved and seconded recommendation to approve the submission of these capital priorities. Anyone opposed? Seeing and hearing none, that passes. And good luck to our teams putting together those business cases. Thank you so much for that work. Moving through our agenda to L3, we have a policy and regulation, community use of schools, CUS rentals, so that the board approve policy PL03, community use of school facilities, and the regulation, community use of school facilities. I see it's been moved by Trustee Olmsted, seconded by Trustee Sipcar. Do we have any questions or discussion on this? Do we have any presentation on this? I don't think we do. Superintendent Armstrong is there just in case. No presentation. Any questions, comments from trustees? Seeing and hearing none. Anyone opposed to the community use of school facilities policy and regulation? Anyone opposed?
I just have a question. How much is rental of a gym? How much do we charge, and do we get any revenues out of it? Or is there a break-even proposition?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I just need to check that for you. I don't have that directly in front of me. So everything is intended to be cost recovery, although there is certainly rates that are discounted for community groups, not-for-profit community groups, because we do receive community hub funding through the ministry. So I would need to confirm, and I can follow up for you.
I'm assuming we don't use this as a revenue source then.
Not really, to be honest with you. Typically doesn't generate anything like that.
Thank you. And back to, I'm going to call the question here. Do you have a question on this, Trustee Chin?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, on page 31st, and I saw it's added for nonprofit and community groups. I wonder why we add this nonprofit and why exclude other, groups that might, even they are for profit, but they can, utilize our utilities and buildings and give us extra money funding for that.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. We wouldn't exclude a for-profit for using renting a school facility, but we wanted to clarify that community use of schools is truly meant for, like, we want to make the space available for the community, which typically does support our not-for-profit, and our community groups, which tend, like your local club or your scout group, a local soccer group, you know, a volleyball league. Those aren't necessarily for-profit enterprises, and they need space in order to run their activities. And because we're publicly funded, we want to be able to make sure that we are making that space that's available. But certainly, I'm happy to turn that over as well to the to members of the policy committee who approved or recommended that this policy move forward, and I'm sure they'd be able to comment on it further.
Well, I am Trustee Burgess, as a member of policy committee, are you looking to make a comment on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Through you, I just bring notice to the full sentence, and I think Superintendent Armstrong captured it, but the Greater Essex County District School Board encourages the use of schools as a community facility for not-for-profit and community groups. It doesn't exclude anyone else, but as it's public money, in other words, it's ratepayers, taxpayers' money, we encourage primarily not-for-profit and community groups because they are the ones who would be the most vulnerable, I'm going to say, as far as cost pressures, etc. And since these, Superintendent Armstrong already mentioned that it's not really a revenue generator for it. We're all usually struggling for cost recovery. It's to honor the fact that the general community supports and subsidizes our building. And so therefore it's our way of saying back, well, here you are outside of school hours, you get first dibs because you've already supported. And it's those not-for-profit and community groups that need that extra hand very often. I support that amendment in there for that.
Thank you for that, Trustee Burgess. And I will note for trustees, when you receive your policy committee package, it does have the minutes from the following meeting on it, and there was some discussion at policy committee about that line, and so that context is captured a bit, I'm sure, captured a bit in those minutes as well. All right. Anyone opposed to the community use of school facilities policy and regulation? Anyone opposed? Seeing and hearing none, that passes. Thank you very much. Moving through our agenda to L4, we have a policy and regulation for vandalism and theft. It's been moved by Trustee Cook and seconded by Trustee Sipcar. I don't believe we have a presentation on this either, although Superintendent Armstrong would be here to answer questions from trustees. Do we have any questions from trustees? Go ahead, Trustee Sipcar.
The only thing I want to make note of for other trustees is that the regulation is new. It does say that in the report, but what we felt at the policy committee that was important was a public-facing document that explained, or I guess, and governed the way that our board makes decisions when there is an act of vandalism or theft. I think there were some questions around that, and a lot of those were buried in our admin procedure, which isn't available for even trustees to see. So I appreciate the work that administration did, particularly Superintendent Armstrong, who was spearheading this to create this regulation, as I think it's really important that the public knows how we take responsibility when there are acts of vandalism or theft. So thank you to her and her team for that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from trustees on this policy and regulation for vandalism and theft? I want to echo Trustee Sipkar's comments. I think this is a really effective way to bring some of that into the public and to give people an expectation of not only what we will do, but what we do as a precautionary measure in advance of the unfortunate incident that might happen. So thank you very much for that. I will call the question. Anyone opposed to the passing of the policy and regulation for vandalism and theft? Anyone opposed? Seeing and hearing none, that passes. Thank you, trustees. Moving forward to the reports to be received, and we have a report from the Director of Education, Director Kelly.
Thank you very much, Chair Higginson. And I'm just waiting for the PowerPoint is coming up. All right, through you, Madam Chair. Okay, because of everything that has happened, it may seem like much longer, but we finally reached and now have surpassed 100 days of school in the 2021-22 school year. And as you can see on the band of one of those crowns, we are certainly 100 days smarter. And we're back in class learning together after another period of online classes. I think this, yeah, thank you. Hopefully we're here to stay because there's nothing that stimulates working together with classmates to build stuff. Our return coincided with the return of winter. We can go ahead. After a very dry November and December, and we had 3 days of bus cancellations, but that didn't stop students from showing up and building stuff together at LaSalle Public School. Next slide. Last week, we braved the cold weather to turn down the temperature a couple degrees in many of our buildings to acknowledge World Sweater Day. More than 30 of our schools took part this year. Next slide. The outdoor conditions are great for celebrating the Winter Olympics. We are busy these days enjoying Canadian success in China, and at Giles Campus French Immersion Public School, they're demonstrating their own type of athletic artistry. Next slide. Earlier this month, we launched our new website following months of hard work and determination, and we're learning how to best utilize this new platform to the best of its ability. But it certainly looks great with easy access to important information. Next slide. And there's nothing more important these days than kindergarten registration. Although we're still having online open house on February 23rd, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm to sign kids up for what we hope will be a traditional in-person start to the next school year. Next slide. And just yesterday, we enjoyed Valentine's Day at many of our schools with an outpouring of love and affection. And this is a good opportunity to express our heartfelt appreciation to everyone in our school communities who've worked so hard over the past 2 years to spread some love. The pandemic has been tough on everyone's mental health, but we have had it in our mind, and to all of you, our teachers, our support staff, our administrators, our students, and our families, thank you for helping each other get through this together. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Director. I love seeing these pictures of all our little learners and our littlest ones. Look how cute they are. Oh, it's so wonderful. Do we have any questions for the Director in her report this evening? It is so wonderful to see students back in school. I live on a school route, and so to watch them walk back and forth and all the activity in the morning is something quite near and dear to my heart. So I'm so grateful for that, and thank you for highlighting that. Do we have a report from our OPSBA Director this evening?
I will, Madam Chair, if I could. I can say that at the end of January, OPSBA held its Public Education Symposium, coupled with regional meetings, which I attended, and some of my colleagues from Greater Essex. It was really informative. We had some great keynote speakers. I'm afraid I can't offer a written report right now because I can't access my notes. I'm going to just give a verbal report if I could, but I wanted to highlight one of the keynotes if I could. And anybody, if they want to, I strongly encourage, even members of the public for that matter, please go to opsba.org, OPSBA.org. That's Ontario School Boards Association.org. And you will see under the events tab PES, or Public Education Symposium, and you will see that the conference was captured, and there are some passwords, and you can watch it, stream the keynotes, etc. But the one that I'd like to highlight was Dr. Nicholas Christakis. Dr. Christakis gave us a great keynote. He's from Yale University, behavioral scientist, and specializing in lots of things. Makes him an excellent keynote on just dealing with a new pathogen invading our species, such as COVID-19, and how it affects education and society. Gave a great background, etc. But what I really appreciated from his perspective was where he thought we were in the scheme of things, and looking at it from a historical point of view. Most of us haven't lived through, a major plague. Some of us have. Some of us will know, in our lifetime what a novel virus like HIV did to friends and family around the world, or what H1N1 did, or any of the things that we've seen. But he gave us a perspective from all of history. So drawing on Homer and the Iliad, the Bible, Cervantes, Shakespeare, John of Ephesus, and all kinds of things, of people who literally captured what plagues were and how society at large handled it. And it gave us a great reference, because we as a species, we as humans have been through this before. And it gave me a sense of kind of empathy from the ancestors, that not only will we get through this, we'll probably have some predictable ways of getting through it. And one of it was looking at it in 3 phases. There's the immediate phase. He likened it to a tsunami. You see the waves coming, the crash comes. It's highly destructive. Everybody is going every which way. It's novel. You don't know what to do. It's in real time. And then the intermediate phase, and that's when the wave goes out, and then you look at the detritus, and you see the destruction, and that's the cleanup phase. And then afterwards is the post-pandemic, and that's when you actually make changes and lessons learned, and society gets on with it. And he likened also to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's phases of grief, and that we're all at different places. Recently, we can really feel it in the last few weeks. We've all had levels of being fed up, where, if we ever hear the word pivot again, where our heads are going to explode, not knowing what that pivot means. But, and that thing that the student trustees brought forward, persistence, that staying there, hanging in, making sure that you're okay. And I strongly suggest, if you can take, he speaks for half an hour, and he takes some questions and answers, and it really puts it into a great perspective. He feels we're at the end of the beginning. So the wave is receding, and we're now going to be looking at how do we clean this up? How do we recover? How do we plan so that those kids who don't have the phonemic awareness, because they haven't had the benefit of seeing mouths move in front of them, to understand that, how to capture language and express that, how that can be remediated. The socialization, the mental wellness, all of those things. So we're going to be in recovery mode, and we're going to be moving forward and catching up. And so we're just on the cusp of that intermediate phase. It was a very hopeful talk, and questions and answers. But he did talk about the political stuff too. And I think we've also seen that acutely in our district and across our province, and in fact across the country. But education is key to this, understanding what we've gone through as a society and how education can help us move forward and be prepared, for what lies ahead. So I strongly suggest if everybody goes over to OPSBA.org to take the best parts out of the Public Education Symposium to really look at that and digest it, because I think it's going to help us make some good plans going forward. I'll take any questions if you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Trustee Burgess. Any questions for our OPSBA director? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very much. Moving down to report M3, update on diversity, equity, and inclusion actions. Director Kelly.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. In your package, you have an update on actions taken in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, largely since September. You will note the importance that this report links very closely to our strategic directions in creating confident learners and engaging communities. The actions are categorized within the report under 5 headings, and they are collecting data for analysis to inform action, collaborating and consulting, developing policy and regulation in short-term and long-term plans, developing curriculum programming and managing instructional resources, as well as providing professional learning with the goal of building staff capacity. So the actions are listed under each of those categories. There are many things listed there in terms of, things like our census that's being done, also our new DEI committee, some information about our board equity and improvement plan that is still in development and up for consultation, and then a lot of information about some of the professional development that's been provided to date up until the next the PA day, which is actually on Friday. So this is certainly not a report just from the Director of Education, but for a team, and so we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions from trustees on this report? Trustee Burgess.
My question is about, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you if I could, how are we going to encourage self-identification of any of the racialized or marginalized groups to build a board equity improvement plan that really reflects the students and the staff we serve? A lot of this information is held private. There are cultural implications to coming out, to self-identifying as Indigenous, etc. There's a lot of things. So how are we going to sensitively encourage that so that we know that we have good data, but keep it sensitively held?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Trustee Burgess, for the question. Important question. We have conducted our staff census, and Turner Consulting assisted us with that and provided us some really good advice, in terms of the confidentiality pieces, encouraging people, good reminders, but assurance about the confidentiality of that information, which is why I think it's a good idea to have a experienced company like Turner Consulting assisting with us. So we did get advice on that. We will be moving into the student census later in the year. And again, we would seek that advice. But I do agree with you that sometimes it is difficult for people to identify, and also even just encouraging a high participation rate in the both staff and student census and their number of reminders. All of those things I think are encouraging, but the privacy piece and maybe talking about why we do the census, why this is important for our staff and students, and how this can assist us in arriving at action plans to move forward. So thank you for the question, and I know that we will learn more as we move into the student census as well in terms of what kinds of things would assist in that kind of identification. We're going to aim high for participation in the census.
Thank you. Did you have a supplemental, Trustee Burgess?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Ching.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is regarding the Chinese community, and yeah, during this pandemic, we all know that Chinese community has suffered a lot because of the pandemic, and a lot of hatred towards it, and also, you know, a lot of violence towards Chinese community. And I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, and only Chinese wear masks, and they are discriminated, and because they wear masks. So and for the for our school board, and I really I didn't see much about, you know, what we have done regarding this, especially from the provincial level. Provincial, you know, minister has already said that the whole in Ontario, we will add the, you know, Asian history, Canadian Chinese history in the curriculum and in the instructional resources, but this part has is kind of ignored, and I wonder if because of the pandemic and the specific situation, we can, you know, hurry up regarding this part and try to do something on that, and you know, put some resources and do some curriculum programming on that regarding the Chinese Canadian history, and to, you know, combat the hatred towards Chinese community. And also, I see that TDSB, they have Chinese Heritage Month is actually in February. I don't know if our school board would like to consider, you know, setting up those kind of heritage months for different groups of minorities. So that might, you know, make people more educated regarding the, you know, the minorities. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for that. I like the idea of the Heritage Month. Good suggestion. I appreciate that. And you're right, there is a gap in terms of this area, and I appreciate you know, your advocacy in this area. And again, it is something we do need to work on. So thank you for your thoughts, Trustee Chin. I appreciate them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other questions? Comments from trustees? I have I don't know if it's a comment or a question, but this is a load of work. I'm looking at the bullet points, and I was trying to kind of map a timeline of what's happening when. And so I can imagine for our staff out there who are embarking on this work and looking at things like PD days that are coming up and what's happening with those, and then a census, and then this question, and then this survey, and they're maybe having their own internal conversations. I'm wondering how staff are feeling, what the communication has been like with those, and the kind of the kind of, maybe Trustee Burgess touched on it, the kind of emotions it might bring up. I'm wondering what the feedback has been from staff on that, and the just the kind of level of work that it's been, both for senior administration and for our staff at the school level as well.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chair Hankinson. I think that obviously it does bring up emotion. It obviously is a tough conversation. This is the work. Yeah, and we do have some surveys that have come back from a lot of our work. And I think Superintendent Howard, you may be able to speak to this more, but we do ask people during, teachers, for example, or those who are taking part in, our support staff who are taking part in this, you know, what they would like to learn more about, what they're concerned about, the impact that this has had on them. We do have support systems in place for individuals who are feeling vulnerable or concerned about some of the things that this might trigger. So all of those are part of our professional development. So I don't know if Superintendent, you want to add anything else to that, but certainly those are some of the things we've done for recent professional development.
I may add our recent organization of the DEI committee, which is representative of all bargaining groups. one of our very first sessions was to review professional development that we've had to date and feedback from the extensive surveys that we've done with staff, and that we're very grateful that they're feeding us information to help guide us in doing the work. A perfect example that was given and fed through the data and by the DI committee is staff are seeking more information on how to support students who are coming out in the 2S LGBTQ+ community. Staff are wanting to mitigate tensions between students who are coming out and maybe are having some difficulties with home life. So our staff are thirsty for that information. And yes, I would concur that it is complicated, messy work. And we've begun the PD through professional development days, but again, being complicated work, we look forward to a return to professional development to continue to build the toolbox for our educators who are earnest in wanting to do this work and wanting to do it well. So we look forward to that. But yes, absolutely, the feedback from our teachers have been imperative, and from our union partners in helping us to understand the heaviness of the work. And of course, with all intent of moving beyond performative work and going deep into helping to dismantle anti-oppressive practices within the district and eliminating, racism in all areas. It's a long process, so there's much work to do.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I know that this is quite an undertaking, not just in the kind of bullet points here, but in the way that we feel it and the way that we move through the system with it. And I'm grateful for that confluence of, I recall not too long ago, we just had a motion that passed about a report about staff well-being. And I'm grateful for that confluence of those two perspectives, because then it certainly does flow down to our students as well. And it becomes part of the fabric of those school sites and those facility sites. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that report, and I'm grateful for the report as we kind of move forward, and looking forward to hearing more about that work as we continue it. Let me find my way through my agenda here. So we are at Chair's report. I don't have anything to report this evening. Our Chair's call with the minister was moved till Thursday, so I will have a report on that next time. So we are at trustee question period. Do we have any questions from trustees in trustee question period this evening? Trustee Burgess, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually had a question about your Chair's report because I wanted to know, and I'll just let you mull it over while I give through you to administration my question. This last couple of weeks, we've had an extraordinary time in our district, specifically with an ongoing protest and the closure of Church Road, and trying to determine who had jurisdiction on what part, who could do what, and it affected school life. It affected work life for folks, businesses, everyone, but it affected students in so much as our district and our coterminous board had to move learning to online because of an ongoing protest. It made me think that I wanted to ask what are our reactions and what are our proactive moves that we have for emergency measures, our coordination with all of the other jurisdictions that came into play over the last little while. Madam Chair, you as chair, have a place somewhere politically as our spokesperson, having students being affected by something that circles around competing human rights and policy and and all of that. So I wondered through you, if I could ask administration, do we have a new outlook? Are we looking at seeing that this is sort of an existential thing, that we know how us being a border district and having our schools being relatively easily disrupted unless there's some really good coordination with policing and rules. How are we moving forward on that?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Trustee Burgess. That's a really tough question, but I do want to comment on a couple of things. I was very pleased at the correspondence that we had from the Windsor Police around this. I mean, I personally was called about some information, and I know that Mr. Corbeck, I believe, received some information as well. So I do really appreciate that kind of cooperation, which I've always appreciated with Windsor Police and the surrounding areas. I do also want to note that this the communications between the school boards, not just around this particular incident, but also around a lot of our vaccinations, around extracurricular, all that. I think it's been a really helpful experience to work very collaboratively with the other boards and have a common front. And you know, even our decision around Northwood, for example, erring on the side of caution there, but informing each other and working back and forth, I think has really been a benefit to us. So in those ways, I've really appreciated the community partnership, you know, always working with public health. I think maybe there's some outcomes in that we learn that the communication is really important, that we really need to work together. And so, you know, with respect to our own board interactions with other partners, I can say that I'm really pleased with that. The situation has been really tough in terms of, you know, how these situations have occurred and what people have seen. So I think I just want to acknowledge the partnership that we have with a lot of community partners. And I think all of that working together can really model some things. And you asked a very complicated question in terms of our students, but those are just some of the things I'd like to highlight in response.
Thanks, Director Kelly. I just, from my own perspective on it, I want to echo some of those thoughts and also thank our Windsor Police Service and OPP and RCMP and London and Waterloo and all that collaborated with us to keep our community safe, because Trustee Burgess, you're right. Our communities are where our students are. Our communities are where our schools are. And further to that, I want to thank what I'm sure, I mean, I don't have a glimpse into every classroom, but I'm sure there were tough conversations happening in classrooms across our district. And so thanks to our teachers for and our education and support staff for navigating some of those really difficult conversations. I think when I look at some of our, you know, I'm looking at news media that's coming out of other jurisdictions, not here, but some in BC, where safety of students was a priority for us. It was also a priority for our community partners like Windsor Police. I'm grateful for that. And I hope I know that will continue. And I hope that communication that goes back and forth will help in mitigating what could boil over from a blockade into a school site. Grateful that it did not in this case. Grateful that we had the response that we had for the school that we had to put online. Grateful that we have that ability to do that. And thank you to our staff for adjusting and pivoting for that, and our staff or our students and families for adjusting to that. We are in no way past it. We are still actively a part of this shift. And I think what we talked about this a little bit with the first motion that we dealt with tonight, and the fact that education becomes the kind of cornerstone of much of the work that we do with DEI. It certainly is here as well. We've seen it from the kind of, does everyone need a civics lesson? Those things happen in our schools. Also, tough conversations happen in safe spaces in our schools. and it's a place where students know that they can trust the people that they're around, and their peers are there, and they can have these conversations. And it's important that we allow those critical conversations and that critical thinking to develop there in an environment that is structured. I think that's incredibly important. I'm glad to be in this work. To be doing this work at this time. I also work at the university, which was somewhat involved in a tangential way. And I think about it there too. What we are kind of doing in the education sector has a huge impact on what becomes of this. And learning about what a thing called the Emergency Measures Act is, and what it entails, and our students are learning that now in real time, and I'm grateful for the support of community partners, and certainly Greater Essex, all of us at Greater Essex, for how we support our students and families through it. So that's a tough one, but ongoing. And thank you to our community partners, indeed, for helping us through that and continuing to keep us safe.
Madam Chair, I appreciate those words. Thank you very much. I would suggest too that maybe a little a review next time you have a city and boards liaison committee meeting, that it is on the agenda as a kind of a standing item, just as a review for boards going forward, so that we acknowledge that we are all in it together. But I really appreciate your words. And thank you, Madam Director, for that, because I think it is existential, it's ongoing, and we need to have those great partnerships. Thanks.
I appreciate the prompt, Trustee Burgess. Thank you for that. So I have Trustee Cook and Student Trustee McCowie. Go ahead, Trustee Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So everyone knows that the last little while has been a struggle with the Riverside Secondary School community. So moving forward with what I'm going to ask tonight, I'm doing this on behalf of the Riverside Secondary School community, and on behalf of Trustee Hatfield, who has approved me mentioning her name. So since this has happened, Trustee Hatfield and myself have received many, many emails or phone calls, whatever, with people not being happy with the report that is still on the website, or with the way this was handled. Moving forward, we do have a motion this evening that I'm very happy that passed, and hopefully moving forward that this stuff will be handled much differently. So the report that is still on the website, I have two requests tonight. My first request is that the report on the website be removed. The report is flawed. It was written in a hasty manner. Community was not consulted, including students, alumni, or staff. In that report, there are still mistakes in that report. I'll give one example, and that's still mentioning the feather when it has been agreed upon that it is not a feather, it is a quill. That is still in the report. Other things in that report was done without, in many people's opinions, not just mine, that report was done without any help from people that know the past of Riverside, know the history of Riverside, even the definition of rebel. There is 19 definitions of rebel. The first 17 definitions are positive definitions. The 17th or the 18th and 19th refers to, I know what you're going to say, Madam Chair, but a lot of people get to speak for a little bit before they ask their question. So the 18th and the 19th definition.
Trustee Cook, this is trustee question period, and it is not
it's coming.
Thank you.
So the other thing, like I said, is the feather is still in that report. So my first request is, and question, my first question is, and I do have a supplemental, is will you agree to take down that report, correct the report if you have to, and then put it back up?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Cook. I did think the report was taken down by, not taken down, but it was certainly moved off the front page. It would be archived. I can certainly review that. I did agree. I do agree that the feather piece has made that change. We did after the suggestions of the alumni, and I'm grateful for that. We have to learn from what we, the history, and perhaps that wasn't investigated as thoroughly as it should be. And when that information did come to us, we did consider that and took it back to the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee. So we can certainly review that report. Perhaps you and I can have a conversation about the specifics that you're concerned about, because a lot of that detail in there is quite a bit of actual accuracy, but perhaps we could have a conversation about that. So we will certainly be debriefing, and we have debriefed to some degree on how we could do this better, acknowledging that perhaps conversations could have occurred differently, and we all are learning from that. So I acknowledge that we will take some information away from this and learning, and see how we could do a better job. So, and thank you for your advocacy, and to the alumni for sharing the details that did assist in some of those changes.
And I thank you for that. My supplemental is, I am requesting on behalf of Riverside Secondary Community and Trustee Hatfield, we're requesting a public apology, not only on the website, on our website, Public School Board website, but an apology shared via a press release to the Riverside community, including present students, alumni, and staff, and all of the Riverside community. Would you agree to a public apology?
So you're asking me directly, Trustee Cook? We can certainly provide some clarification around the feather was certainly an issue, and we'd be glad to find some way to acknowledge that. I certainly did appreciate the input of the alumni, and helping us with processes in the future, I think would be very valuable. So thank you for that. We can edit. I can discuss that tomorrow with the communications people.
Thank you.
Student Trustee McCowie, go ahead.
Thank you. As we all know, we quickly shifted to online learning for a period of time towards the end of last semester. As a result, many secondary school students did not write a traditional final exam and found themselves doing alternative projects or having the FSC eliminated entirely. I was wondering what senior administration's plan was come second semester. For the sake of fairness, will exams be suspended? I'd also like to add that boards like Grand Erie, Bruce Grey Catholic, Durham District, Ottawa Carleton, and the Thames Valley District School Board have all already decided to cancel exams for semester 2.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm wondering if I could look to Superintendent Canty, who may have already had some discussions on this, or Superintendent Corbeck.
Certainly. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Kelly. We are in a position now where we are going to continue to encourage our teachers to do what's best for their students in their particular content area. Again, the last semester, we knew that some teachers, specifically in science and math, felt that they wanted to give their students an additional opportunity to show what they know. And they felt the best way to do that, to do what's best for the students in terms of improving their grade, was by giving them a final examination. So we're back to 4 out of 4. We're looking to getting to back of a sense of normalcy. And we do know that some teachers are going to think it's in the best interest of their students to have a traditional exam. Some want to go with FSCs, projects, that sort of thing. So we're not near that point yet. Of course, we're just starting the semester, but again, we are looking forward to using the professional judgment of the teachers to do what's best for their students.
Thank you. And I do have a supplemental, if I may. As a senior level student myself, just speaking with other grade 12 students and senior level teachers, something I hear a lot is the fact that many students have not necessarily written senior level exams. I know the last exam I wrote was first semester of grade 10, and that was it. So I was curious as to whether or not senior administration had any plans or initiatives to help implement strategies to help students transition into post-secondary pathways, specifically university or college. A common concern I'm hearing is that students are entering these sectors unprepared for what a real exam looks like. I know that's a concern I have going into university next year, and I was just curious as to what senior administration may be doing to help ease those concerns.
Thank you again for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. This is one of the primary reasons why some of our teachers feel like they need to give our students an opportunity to do exams so that it prepares them for the exams, the same sort of high stakes, several hours exams they're going to see in university. So especially you see in the university pathway that teachers are interested in providing that opportunity for students not only to show what they know, but to prepare them for post-secondary education.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Student Trustee McCowie. Trustee Burgess, we are at trustee question period and we only have time for one question each. If you could send yours by email to senior administration, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Trustee.
I wanted to object on a point of order, really, honestly.
Thank you, Trustee Burgess. I think the time for point of order has unfortunately passed, but I take your point. Thank you very much.
Have access to the chat.
Pardon me? Sorry, Trustee Burgess, I missed that.
I didn't have access until now. I have sent my notes. I just want to, I object to comments made in trustee question period, asking for action on behalf of a portion of a community that affects the entire board. I think that's out of order.
Thank you. Any other questions in trustee question period this evening? Trustees, I just want to note that we're in a collegial atmosphere here, and I would hope that that would be upheld by all members. And I know that there's maybe some tension we're feeling right now. I want to acknowledge it, and I want to reinforce that we have a code of conduct. And if we're fuzzy on the details of that, we just passed it. It would be worth reading again. We're moving on to notices of motion this evening. Do we have any notices of motion in here from trustees this evening? Any notices of motion? I feel like I'm teaching to a group of students here where all I see is their initials on the screen. Seeing and hearing no notices of motion, do we have any announcements this evening? Trustee Olmsted, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I would just like to do my yearly reminder that February 28th is Rare Disease Awareness Day. It's a very important day to the over 300 million people across the world who do suffer from a rare disease, and to the millions more who are waiting for a diagnosis. Often rare diseases go unnoticed. Their symptoms are not visible to the naked eye. And so the people who do suffer from them and have been diagnosed are often misunderstood, and they don't have proper access to funding or treatment or understanding by the general public. February 28th is a day to show that understanding as well as to advocate for those people often without a voice. So I ask on that day if you can wear blue or denim blue, as that is the color of Rare Disease Awareness Day. There are many, many, many children and staff in our board who have been diagnosed with a rare disease. And I know that it would mean a lot to see the support from the leadership and from anyone listening to support them. As well, you could wear zebra stripes or any kind of stripes that day, because as the zebra stripes are unique, so are the rare diseases faced by so many individuals. And the zebra is often symbolized for Rare Disease Day. So I just wanted to do my annual reminder. It is a very important day to the children that I work with and their families, and many of those children are students in our board. So Thank you. I hope that I see many tweets that day and a lot of love on social media for our rare disease warriors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Olmsted. I will certainly be doing that. My kid is a little hands kid, and it's certainly a wonderful cause to contribute to some awareness for. So thank you for that. Any other announcements from trustees? I just have a reminder here for everyone. We are well underway for kindergarten registration. Thank you to all of the staff who have put so much work into all those great videos that we're seeing on social media. They look great. It's so nice to see our staff and their smiling faces and their enthusiasm to welcome new students into our schools. And we are very welcome we're extending a very warm welcome to our newest students, and we cannot wait to see what our newest learners have to offer to our school communities, and contact your school and get through your virtual tour. I believe it's on the 23rd, and that is actively underway now. So thank you very much for all the efforts put towards that, and welcome to all of our newest GECDSB families. And seeing and hearing no other announcements, I will adjourn our meeting this evening at 8:57, record time tonight. Thank you all very much.